Hi everyone, my name is Siti Nurshada Bintu Roslan, and today I would like to talk about the career as a forensic psychologist. Before we start, do you guys know what is a forensic psychology actually is? So, a forensic psychologist is a professional who applies psychological knowledge to law and crime to study how psychological factors influence legal cases. For example, how mental disorders, witness reliability, or an offender's mental state can affect a case. Their main goals is to ensure that justice is served fairly and that legal decisions are guided by accurate psychological insight. So basically, they can work in many settings such as courts, prisons, police departments, and rehabilitation centers. Basically, anywhere the law and human behavior intersect. Now, let's move on to the main responsibilities of a forensic psychologist. There are 5 main responsibilities of a forensic psychologist. The first one is a psychological assessment and evaluation. The forensic psychologist conducts psychological testing for offenders, victims, and witnesses. They evaluate mental disorder, personality traits, and the risk of reoffending. Based on this evaluation, they prepare detailed psychological reports for use in courts and correctional settings. Next, we have the expert testimony in court. The forensic psychologists are often called to explain their psychological findings in a clear and unbiased way to judges and juries. They also provide the opinions on a person's mental states, the criminal responsibilities, or the reliability of the witness. The third responsibility is a therapy and counseling. The forensic psychologists provide the treatments for offenders to support rehabilitation and reduce the chances of reoffending. They also offer the counselings for victims, families, and the people who are affected by the crime. The fourth is the criminal profiling and investigation support. Here, forensic psychologists analyze behavior patterns to identify the suspect. They also work with the police during investigation to understand the motives and predict the criminal behavior. Lastly, we have competency and risk assessment. This involves determining whether a defendant is mentally fit to stand the trial. They also assess the risk of future violent behavior or the likelihood of reoffending.
Hi, I'm Sophie, and now let me explain what is ethics and professionalism in forensic psychology field. Firstly, let's know that ethics means the science of morality on what is right or wrong. Ethics used to guide the criminal justice system in making rules and law over behavior, where the moral principle and codes of conduct will primarily guided by documents like the American Psychological Association (APA) and Ethical Principle of Psychologists for Society. Next, what is professionalism? Professionalism acts as specialized to ensure the highest quality of service, respect for the right of those they serve within the legal context. Nowadays, professionalism is the standard of behavior on how a competent specialist acts effectively in our eyes. Moving on to our overall ethic and professionalism in forensic psychology field. The first specific point addressed is the integrity. Psychologists seek to promote accuracy, honesty, and truthfulness through scientifically validated tools and adhering to ethical guidelines. The testimony must be clearly and concisely to avoid presenting experts in areas outside their competence. And not just that, they also cannot overstating the certainty of conclusion as to avoid misleading or exaggerated findings which can cause serious harm in legal decision. To make it short, forensic psychologists only need to speak on what they know and present the facts accurately because their words can have serious consequence on someone's life. Let's jump to another point, which is confidentiality and privacy. Psychologists have primary obligation and take reasonable precautions to protect confidential information obtained to be included in written, oral report, and consultation. This means only information related to the purpose which the communication is made. Meanwhile, the sensitive information is disclosed only when legally mandated or with informed consent is significant. For example, The psychologist only can disclose the specific information when the witness agreed to share, such as the diagnosis and treatment details relevant to the cases. Next point is justice. Psychologists recognize that all persons are entitled to access benefit and to equal quality in service where they are making decisions to have the fair treatment under the law. For instance, psychologists assess the defendant objectively, use validated tools, and provide an unbiased report even the defense might not lie about the finding. Moving on to the next point is competence, where the psychologist should only handle the cases that match their skills and knowledge as well. This can be seen by understanding the specific legal question being addressed, like the mental state at the time of the offense. Moreover, they all must have a proper training in both psychology and legal system. This clearly shows that they will keep continuous learning as well as to always staying updated with new laws, research, and method regarding to the nowadays. The last point that I want to highlight is the respect for the individual's right and dignity. As we know, everyone must be treated fairly and respectfully no matter what their background or legal status are. Psychologists should make sure that there is no discrimination based on race, gender, or religion, culture during the case solving. Furthermore, upholding dignity is essential, especially in sensitive legal cases. Last but not least, the 4S of ethical practice is very important in this field. This framework conceptualizes ethical practice consistent with positive ethics, which are: first, anticipate to prepare for ethical issues and challenge. Second is avoid ethical misconduct. Third is address ethical challenges when encountered. Fourth is the aspire to the highest standard of ethical practice.
Hi, my name is Ko Yishen. Today I would like to talk about the issues of self-awareness in forensic psychology. First of all, self-awareness in forensic psychology refers to the ability to recognize one's own thoughts, emotions, biases, and values. It helps forensic psychologists to understand how these internal factors may influence their professional behavior and also their judgments. In this field, where decisions can impact a person's freedom, justice, and reputation, self-awareness is not just about personal growth, it is also a professional and ethical necessity. A psychologist who lacks self-awareness may unconsciously allow their personal beliefs, emotions, or experiences to distort objectivity, leading to biased or unfair conclusions in legal settings. Therefore, maintaining self-awareness helps forensic psychologists to promote an accurate, unbiased, and ethical assessment to ensure that every evaluation is fair and based on evidence rather than the personal influence. Now, let us dive into the issue of personal and cultural bias. In forensic psychology, a psychologist's personal values, beliefs, and also their cultural background can sometimes influence their professional judgment, even without realizing it. For example, in Western cultures, maintaining eye contact is seen as a sign of honesty and also confidence. However, in some Asian or Middle Eastern cultures, avoiding eye contact is actually a form of respect, which means they are not deceit or guilt. If a psychologist is unaware of this difference, they might wrongly assume a person is being dishonest or uncooperative. This shows how stereotyping or misinterpreting behavior across cultures or genders can easily happen. When such biases occur, they may lead to unfair or inaccurate psychological assessments, which can seriously affect the legal outcomes. Therefore, forensic psychologists must stay self-aware, question their own assumptions, and approach every case with cultural sensitivity and have an open-mindedness to ensure fair and objective evaluations. Next, let's talk about another important issue of self-awareness, which is emotional involvement and counter-transference. In forensic psychology, professionals are often exposed to violent, traumatic, or emotionally disturbing cases. Such exposure can easily trigger personal emotions like anger, sadness, or even fear. Sometimes, psychologists may unconsciously over-identify with victims or offenders, especially if the case reminds them of their own past experiences or their personal beliefs. This emotional connection can reduce their objectivity, causing them to make judgments based on their feelings rather than the facts. If these emotional reactions go unrecognized, they can lead to emotional exhaustion or burnout, which not only affects the psychologist's well-being, but also the quality and the fairness of their assessments. That's why self-awareness is essential. It helps psychologists to recognize their emotional boundaries, to seek supervision when needed, and maintain a balanced and ethical professional mindset in every case they handle. Moving forward, another major issue of self-awareness in forensic psychology is the role conflict and maintaining professional boundaries. Sometimes, forensic psychologists may confuse their role as a therapist who helps and supports clients with that of a forensic evaluator who must remain neutral and objective. This confusion can lead to excessive empathy or advocacy, where the psychologist begins to side with one party or feel overly responsible for helping them. When this happens, their impartiality and professional judgment may be compromised, which can weaken the credibility of their evaluation in the court. Therefore, maintaining clear professional boundaries is essential. Forensic psychologists must always remember that their primary duty in forensic settings is to provide objective, evidence-based assessments, while not therapy or personal support. This self-awareness helps uphold both ethics and professionalism, ensuring fairness and trust in their work. Last but not least, another key issue of self-awareness in forensic psychology is cognitive bias and overconfidence. Sometimes, forensic psychologists may develop a tendency to interpret evidence based on their first impressions or expectations. This is a problem known as confirmation bias. This means they might pay more attention to information that supports their initial opinion while ignoring evidence that contradicts it. In addition, overconfidence in one's own judgment can reduce self-reflection, making psychologists less likely to question their assumptions or consider alternative explanations. Both of these issues can seriously limit the fairness and also the accuracy of psychological evaluations. Therefore, forensic psychologists must remain humble, open-minded, and critical of their own thinking, constantly reviewing their conclusions to ensure that assessments are balanced, objective, and evidence-based.
Hello everyone, my name is Mu Qian Lam. Before I discuss the issues of gender equality, I would like to first explain what gender equality actually means. Gender equality refers to a condition where all individuals, regardless of whether they are male, female, or any other gender, have equal access to rights, responsibilities, and opportunities in every aspect of life. This means that a person's gender should never determine their access to education, employment, healthcare, or participation in social and political activities. In other words, everyone deserves the same chances to achieve their goals and contribute to society. Gender equality also promotes fairness, respect, and inclusion. It allows both men and women to contribute fully to development, not just in general society, but also in specific fields like forensic psychology. By understanding gender equality, we can better recognize and address the inequalities that still exist today. Now, let's look at some of the key issues related to gender equality in forensic psychology. The first issue is gender bias in assessment. Sometimes, forensic psychologists may unconsciously judge men and women differently. For example, men are often viewed as more aggressive or dangerous, while women might be seen as more emotional or less responsible. These assumptions can affect risk assessment, how responsibility is evaluated, and even how credible someone appears in court. Such bias can lead to unfair outcomes and damage the objectivity that forensic psychology requires. That's why it's so important for professionals to stay self-aware and constantly check their own biases when working on cases. The second issue is gender stereotypes in crime and victimization. Society's expectations often influence how offenders and victims are perceived. Female offenders may be labeled as unnatural simply because they go against traditional feminine roles, while male victims, especially of abuse, may be ignored or not believed. These stereotypes distort investigations and can lead to unequal legal decisions. In forensic psychology, recognizing and challenging these stereotypes is essential to ensure justice for every individual, regardless of gender. Moving on to the next two issues, unequal opportunities in the profession and systemic inequality. In many regions, leadership positions in forensic psychology are still male-dominated. Women often face barriers such as limited recognition, unequal pay, and slower career advancement. There's also a lack of mentorship and representation, which makes it harder for young women entering the field to progress. Promoting gender balance in leadership roles can make the profession more inclusive and improve the overall quality of psychological practice. The last issue is systemic inequality. This goes beyond individual bias. It's built into the justice and correctional systems themselves. Historically, many policies, assessment tools, and rehabilitation programs were developed around male behavior patterns, which don't always apply to women. As a result, female offenders' unique psychological and social experiences are often overlooked. Forensic psychologists must therefore push for change by advocating gender-sensitive assessments and inclusive research. By addressing these deeper structural inequalities, we can move toward a more balanced and fair forensic system for everyone. That's all from me. Thank you.
Hi, I am Shamila, and today I would like to share some suggestions for those who intend to pursue a career as a forensic psychologist. First, it's important to have strong academic achievements. You need to complete a degree in psychology, and if you wish to become licensed, you must further your studies with a master's degree in clinical psychology or counseling psychology, followed by supervised clinical training. Second one is you need to have emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence in this context means ability to understand and control personal emotions while working with clients. You also need to stay professional when dealing with sensitive cases to prevent emotions from affecting judgment or decisions. And then the third one, you need to have strong communication skills. As a forensic psychologist, you must have good listening and speaking skills to communicate effectively with victims, attorneys, and judges. You also need to be able to adjust your communication style depending on the person and situation. Next, you must have critical thinking skills. This means being able to analyze situations from multiple perspectives and develop effective strategies to solve complex or critical cases. Next, attention to detail is also very important. As a forensic psychologist, you must be able to observe and detect body language, especially when dealing with offenders who might try to manipulate information or evidence. Being detailed helps ensure that no important clues are missed during investigation. Lastly, independence and self-reliance. You need to be self-motivated and capable of managing your casework or research efficiently. It's also important to build professional networks with attorneys or other legal experts to gain more opportunities and strengthen your career.
These are our references.